Hello, hello, One Too Many here, and I'm going to be going over the most recent patch to Marine Arena. You can see up here, this is change log September 28th, and I just want to go over some of the nerfs that really happened in this patch. You can see right here, the most important one is of course going to be the crackling nerf. This last week has been kind of like hell. I had to go Devil Dog every single game because even the few games I didn't, I paid for it by the crackling, would just swarm me in my base, and there's nothing I could do about it. Felt totally helpless, wasting all my saviors trying to just stay alive. So let's start with the Zergling one. And for those of you that don't know, whenever there's a base unit like this, and you see that, for example, in this case, it's the Zergling, and they lost 1 to base damage, so they went from 8 to 7. That nerf also carries over to the Crackling. So it says that the Zergling lost 1 to base damage, but also the Crackling lost 1 to base damage. And then also another Zergling nerf right here is you're no longer able to morph your Cracklings or your Tanklings until the 7-minute mark. This is up from the 5-minute mark. The issue here was that there was no real counter to the Crackling or the Tankling at the 7-minute mark. And what we were seeing last week was not only because the Crackling was so strong, but because there was no counter to them, also, they were able to get this gigantic lead within the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes of the game, and that basically sealed the deal for them, where they were able to just win every single game. Hopefully after these nerfs, we actually stop seeing as many Crackling players, because this last week was just, it was insane how many people were just going Cracklings and doing well. I mean, some people were just A-moving. They weren't even microing the Marines. They weren't even using Marines, and they were doing really well, and that's obviously not intended. Another big nerf is to the maraider. And the maraider's been seeing a lot of nerfs. I think this is because about a month or two ago, they got that, just in general, all the mercenaries' health upgrades were increased. So instead of doing like a meaningless amount of health, they were actually doing a good amount for how much money you had to spend for the upgrade. The problem was with Maraider is that it's a unit that's not intended to have a lot of health. So once you start stacking health on it and combine that with its damage output, it was just overperforming. And we kind of struggled with finding a good way to curb that without weakening the unit too much. This might have actually gone too far, and if so, we can undo it. Basically what had happened is every time you stim now, it's going to cost 25 health, and the concussive shells is not going to reduce this any longer. It's going to cost 25 every single time. This might be too much, like I said. We might end up going back down to 20 if it is, but either way, this is actually feels like a pretty good nerf. The issue was is that people were just stimming their marauders all day. They didn't really care at all. They weren't even like selecting a small amount of marauders out, trying to box it and just stim those. They were just stimming crazy like. So this is going to make them have to think a little bit more about every time that they stim. And let's see, another few of the nerfs were just basic like armor reductions on the Beetle and the Devil Dog. They both lost 1 to armor. And these might look like nerfs, but really what happened is that armor, instead of it being in their base unit, it's got moved to their training upgrades. So now you have to buy the training upgrades to regain that armor again. The reason why we had to bring it down on their base is because they were kind of effortlessly capping Marine damage, which was helping them too much early game feed-wise. Not so much as the Crackling, but definitely significant nonetheless. And then also one final nerf is to the Beetle, and they lost some structure damage. The reason behind that is because a few patches ago they got a damage per upgrade increase, so they went from 1 damage per upgrade to 2.5, which helps them scale a lot better in terms of late game. The issue is that now we had a unit that was getting good damage per upgrade that could burrow into your base and just pop up and kill you whatever building they wanted to. Even command centers pretty quickly. So hopefully this will curb that a little bit, combine that with the armor nerf, and they'll die hopefully. I was able to sometimes just be in someone's base for so long, just tearing through everything. Let's see, other than that, there's not much. The Marine radius increase, so a few updates ago, we limited the amount of Marines that could actually spawn in your base unless you move them. So if you just weren't paying attention to your Marines, they would spawn to a certain radius and then they would stop, which really helped reduce game lag because there aren't as many units on the field anymore of people that just aren't paying attention to their Marines. But what was happening was once you got your double spawn and you were spawning Marines a lot faster, that little tiny radius was filling up too quickly, which really led to issues where you would just stop spawning Marines if you weren't paying constant attention to it, which was just too tedious. So we increased that range by 1, and you'll notice that the Marines that are spawning in that little circle have gotten a little bit bigger. Other than that, this last one right here, it says anti-unit tower consumption range to 5, but I think this is a mistype. I think this is actually increased support tower transfusion range to 5. The problem was is that some of the mercenaries' bases were not within range of transfusion, and you couldn't, like, for example, it was Mutalisk that was the main issue. You couldn't transfuse your Mutalisk base from your support tower. So we increased that by 1. Now you can reach the Mutalisk base, and you still cannot reach your allies' command center, which I don't know if that'd be an issue or not, but you're not able to do it nonetheless. And that's basically about it for this update. I'm not doing videos on every single one. I'm just trying to do videos on the ones that impact maybe the way the game is played. And I don't really cover the bug fixes either, because that's stuff that really should have been working to begin with. So basically, to sum up this patch, I would say crackling's not as strong anymore. You don't really have to worry about it. They're not able to get their early feed that they were before. So, I mean, of course, still pay attention to it. If you see someone that's going crackling and they're doing really well, you're going to want to counter them. But you don't have to just blind counter crackling every game. Hopefully, once the game changes and people stop going as much crackling, that'll be a really good thing. Other than that, if you guys actually notice any large imbalances, kind of like what was happening with the crackling last week, go ahead and post about it on the forums. Include a replay if you can. That way we can kind of fix it as fast as possible. Yeah, other than that, that's about it. This is OTM. I hope you guys liked this, and I will talk to you later.